if you want your chance to win this great basket, this is your last week to do it. We spent exactly $0 on this basket. It is all things we found around the church. They're good things, they're not bad things. One of the things about being in a church is people leave a lot of really weird good things. We can't ever find homes for that. There's some glasses, by the way. If you're missing glasses, it doesn't sound good for about 2 months. So anyway, there's a lot of good stuff in there. All you have to do, there's 2 ways you can get a raffle ticket for this basket. First is to turn in your pledge card. We're still missing about 150 of you, and I really want to get this pledge drive wrapped up for Christmas. So turn in your pledge card, or if you already have, you're already entered into this. The other way you can get an extra raffle ticket is convince someone else to turn in a pledge card and then take their raffle ticket. So that's it. That's all you got to do. We're not where we need to be to get this church funded for next year, and that's a significant issue. However, we are well on the path if all the pledge cards come in. So anyway, and you get a basket of stuff possibly. Also, I want to let you know, we are paying attention to this is like the bane of every public speaker's existence. We are going to figure out what is happening with Omicron as we find out what's going on. We don't know anything yet. I do want, for those of you to be aware, the choir will be singing later. So it's a lot of them, and there's a lot of sound that's going to come out. They are all vaccinated. We verified that. But if you need to not be in the space for that, that's okay. It's going to happen right after the doxology. I'll talk for a little while, and then they sing, okay? Also, the Christmas stuff. Here we go. This upcoming Friday, we're going to do the pageant in some way, which we will reveal to you when I figure it out sometime this week. You will find out on Sunday. What we normally do is invite everyone up here to sort of spread their aerosols amongst each other as we do an impromptu pageant. We're going to do some sort of adaptation of that will be much less aerosol-y. But that will be next week is the pageant. And then the day after, so now Sunday, now Monday night is the solstice service. That will be at 7 o'clock. It will also be available online, live. Then Christmas Eve, we have a problem in that we cannot fit all 300 of you who want to be here. So what we're going to do is we have 3 services. 4:30 and 6, we're calling them carols and candles, where we're just kind of trimming down and making it a little more of a lean service. There's no weight requirement for this service. It's just we're going to have less stuff. And then all of the other stuff that you would expect is going to be at the 7:45 service, but all 3 are going to be equal in quality. Then on the 26th, we're having a regular old Sunday service, which is, we don't have all of the weird extra stuff, but we're still having church. It's going to be a really good time. That's a lot. You got all of that? Come to church Sunday, Monday, Friday, Sunday. Got it? Oh, and turn in your pledge cards and maybe get a basket. Now I'll invite Byron McCaughey and his children up for the Advent wreath.
And if you want an extra dose of church, come to church on the 17th for an adult bonfire. So if you want to come sit around the fire with friends, that's another chance. "7 p.m., thank you for asking. The joy of God with us does not come as naive optimism or surface-level feel-goodness. Joy cannot be imposed from on high. Joy cannot be commanded. The joy of God with us is mingled with grief, exists side by side with mourning, knows that pain and death are all too real, but do not have the final word. This joy tends tenderly to beauty and to softness, and the gladness that comes from paying attention to what matters. The joy of God with us is collective, liberating us from deadly despair. Joy is gestating in darkness. It comes unexpectedly. Joy invites our expectation and demands our participation. Prepare the way for joy with sorrow. May joy be birthed among, within, and through us this Advent.
And I do want to clarify, the problem with Christmas is you got a big old list of things to announce. Kathy is absolutely correct, right there on my list, squeezed in between the Christmas Eve and the emails, is the adult, there's going to be, here's what we did over COVID. We bought a fire pit. And so we've been trying to find ways to get people together outside, and so there's a fire pit. Mostly it's been kids at the fire pit, but now it's
At, not in.
at the fire pit. If you would like your opportunity to be amongst, around, in any way other than in the fire pit, and this is not banning kids, but this is really just a chance for the adults to be together. So that is this Friday. I'm really glad I did that on a day where we don't have a lot of bad news to announce with the Stones. So I'm making that hard transition. We have a church member and a child of a church member we're thinking of. Sarah Trailer is recovering from a planned surgery, and Harlow Ruckstuhl is recovering from a broken arm, I believe. So this ritual we have here is open for visitor and member alike. For those of you in person, we invite you to come forward either along the west or the east wall. Take a stone, let it represent whatever work you're doing, whatever's on your heart, whatever you need to let go of, just whatever it is, and place it in the chalice bowl. And for those of you online, type into the chat what you're working with, what your stone is. We now invite those who wish to come forward as we place stones. And would you join me in saying, with hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is a symbol of the power of love.
From all that dwell below the stars, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue.
So we are on week 3 of Advent. As a reminder, Advent is not the birth, it's not Christmas, it's the season of waiting for Christmas. So today I thought we would spend some time talking about this idea of a waiting joy. All right, so I have a confession here. So I knew what each theme of the candle was, and I knew that this week was joy. But when I wrote the sermon, I forgot that. And so I did it all about hope. And on Friday, when I looked back and realized what I did, because I actually got my sermon written early this week, which was maybe the mistake. And I looked at it was joy instead of hope, and I said, oh, shoot. So I've rewrote most of this sermon, but not all of it. Maybe it's informative of where we are, at least where I am, that I'm not so focused on a lost joy. Because honestly, I never really lost the joy in all of this mess. And I think that may be a Louisiana issue, a state that gives us so much trauma that it's, if I was going to struggle to find joy amidst diversity, I would have been struggling a long, long time ago. Anyway, I'm going to try and splice the two, but just know, I mean, they're both in there, but I messed up. So anyway, this is going to be really about joy, but I did a lot more hope than I meant to. So sorry, I'm giving you too much hope. Liturgically speaking, the birth of a new child, and in this case, Jesus, brings about the promise of a more hopeful world. See, I did it there. But we're not at that spot yet. We are 9 months in, and we are predicting what is coming along with the stress and the chaos. So today I thought we'd do something a little interesting. Well, it's interesting for those of us who went to school specifically to study this stuff and to sort of dig around in the scriptures and find new meanings. Maybe you'll be interested too. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to talk about how Jesus himself, Jesus as sort of his Unitarian Universalist issue. Then I'm going to share with you two different readings from the scriptures about the birth of Jesus and how different they are. Then we'll talk about how we can make it through these last 2 weeks of the season. So let's start with why I, a raised Unitarian Universalist minister, celebrate Christmas so strongly. To put it very simply, when Jesus did his ministry, he did not believe in hell. That's also in line with Judaism, by the way. So if you read the Gospels, hell's not really in there. There's like a mention of a garbage dump that people have translated to hell, but it's a whole other conversation. So it's reasonable to say that Jesus was a Universalist. Also, especially if you read the Gospel of Mark, Jesus was not super into being called God, and there was not really a Trinity anywhere in the Gospels. So because he believed in one God and not three, it's reasonable to say that Jesus was a Unitarian. Even still, I don't know how useful this is going to be over Christmas dinner if you explain that to people. It is my view, however, that Jesus started a religion that was more focused on love and justice, and that should always take priority over empire, over institutions, or any other time that religion embraces an orthodoxy and tradition at the expense of those who are marginalized or would be harmed. In fact, Jesus was murdered by the Roman Empire because he dared to be on the side of radical justice rather than an agent of the state. That is the religion I serve, and that is the Unitarian Universalism that I know. And so as such, I logistically celebrate Christmas as the birth of the founder of this religion. For those of you who've been through Roots class, you'll know that Unitarianism traces its roots all the way back to the birth of Jesus, and so does Universalism. We branched out quite a bit when we got kind of out from under the Christian tree. But those are the origins. So without Jesus, there is no Unitarianism, there's no Universalism, there's no merger. So I celebrate as the founder of this religion. Not all UUs agree with me, and not all UU ministers agree with me. And I can't speak on behalf of Eric, but I'm sure not all UU ministers at this church agree with me. But I'm the one up here today, so I'm preaching it as truth. Also, I celebrate this metaphorically because with every child that is born, there is a greater chance of more hope and more joy coming into this world. And it is spiritually significant for us to spend time in worship thinking about our time waiting for a world that one day we hope to have.
So James Luther Adams, who was a Christian theologian, a Unitarian theologian in the mid-20th century, once wrote, "Church is a place where we go to practice what it means to be human. And part of what it means to be human is to practice generosity." And so at this point in the service, we come to the time where we have an opportunity to practice generosity. Not only generosity to the people within our congregation, but as it has become our practice, we are sharing our offering every week with a community organization that does good right here in Baton Rouge. This month, the offering goes to Assisi House, which is an organization founded by one of our own, Leslie Grover, which works in the community to support those in need, particularly young people in need. So at this time, I would ask you to give your gifts generously as a part of being human, as a part of being part of this congregation, and as a way of giving back to the world that we live in.
So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger, because there was no guest room available for them. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today, in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." Suddenly, a great company of the heavenly host appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests." When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about." So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby, who was lying in the manger. When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about the child, and all who heard them were amazed at what the shepherds said to them.
So we have 4 different gospels that tell the story of Jesus from 4 different perspectives. So instead of thinking of them as all true, per se, it might be helpful to think of them as 4 different people describing the same event. So if your parents were to describe you, they would describe you differently than maybe your ex-spouse or your coworker might describe you. That was not written as a joke. I just mean they're going to describe you differently. The oldest gospel is the Gospel of Mark. He shows up so the nativity scene in Mark is, he shows up as an adult. So that's it. There is Gospel of John. It was the last one to be written, and it's a little more disconnected from the historical Jesus. There's a little more spiritual liberty taken there. Matthew and Luke share two sources, wherever Mark got his stuff from and this other source that we can't figure out where it came from. Luke is a little more concerned with the justice Jesus, sort of care for overturning, the care for the people. And Matthew is absolutely fixated on proving that Jesus fulfilled the prophecy. So, the Sermon on the Mount? That's because there's a prophecy in the Hebrew Scriptures about the Messiah coming on a mountain. Luke preaches a sermon on the plain. So we know Jesus preached it somewhere, but where it is, who knows? So anyway, instead of looking at Jesus being visited by the shepherds and the Magi, if we look at these stories as both saying Jesus was visited by someone, but Luke and Matthew disagree about who that someone is, I think it could be informative. According to Luke, the birth of Jesus was foretold by an angel. Some entity representing God told shepherds about the birth of him. The shepherd's job was to take care of the sheep. Sheep were used to provide food and clothing for the people. According to Luke, the birth was foretold to those who were in charge of caretaking everybody, essentially. So according to Luke, the birth of Jesus gives hope to workers and to caretakers. It would give hope to those who did not have wealth or power. And it would be most visible to those whose job it was to cultivate or to caretake. And to pull this into where we usually are mid-Christmas, there's an element of this story in Luke that says, for those of you who feel hopeless or who feel overwhelmed or overworked, those of you who in your day-to-day life do not see a means of hope, hope is coming. So usually every minister picks one Sunday to be the kind of sad Christmas Sunday. Usually falls around here. We also take part of the Christmas Eve service and make it the sad part. This is behind the scenes stuff you may not have known, but that's what we do. I tend to think of it this way. There's sort of a dividing line in Christmas. And everyone is born on the happy side of Christmas. When you're a kid, Christmas is all about getting things, giving things, seeing family, and getting off of school. And each year, as you become more attuned with the challenges of the short days, each year as you've known more and more people who die, as you've seen more and more of your life fading away, or see things in your future you thought could happen fading away, or when your family and friends have let you down again, or when you are starting to focus on all of your failures and estrangements. Well, there is some point where most people cross the line from the happy Christmas to the sad Christmas. We have to tread a little lightly here when it comes to living out what it means to do Christmas. So we can use the lights and the story and the tree and the all of these aesthetics of Christmas as a way to pretend that the sadness does not exist. And this is really where joy is informative. So you can use joy and play and happiness to cover up your feelings, to tell a woman to smile instead of listening to what she's saying, for example. Or you could use the aesthetics of Christmas as a way to keep someone afloat during what might be the hardest time of year for them. It's why there is so much, for those of you who've been to a memorial service here, and people love services, like number one recruitment tool we have in this church is how we do our memorial services. Because we let you be joyful amidst the sorrow. And I think that that is significant. You know, right after a major trauma or a death, I tell people to go eat a lot of junk food and watch bad TV. And I mean that as like a spiritual thing. Like, it is okay for you to not grieve all the time. Like, it's okay and important to take breaks. So you can use Christmas as the break. Does that make sense? So for those of you who have crossed the threshold from a happy Christmas to a sad Christmas, the Gospel of Luke is here for you. This story is the birth of hope for all those who need hope, for all of those who might feel left behind or forgotten. Let's sing this next hymn written by a Unitarian right where you're seated.
It came upon a midnight clear, that glorious song of old, from angels bending near the earth to touch their harps of gold. Peace on the earth, goodwill to all, from heaven's all gracious King. The world in solemn stillness lay to hear the angels sing. Still through the cloven skies they come, with peaceful wings unfurled, and still their heavenly music floats o'er all the weary world. Above its sad and lowly plains, they bend on hovering wing, and ever o'er its babel sounds the blessed angels sing. But with the woes of war and strife, the world has suffered long. Beneath the angels' strain have rolled 2,000 years of wrong, and we who fight the wars hear not the love song which they bring. Oh, hush the noise of battle strife, and hear the angels sing. For lo, the days are hastening on, by prophet bards foretold, when with the ever-circling years comes round the age of gold, when peace shall o'er the earth its ancient splendor fling, and the whole world gave back the song which now the angels sing.
Would you join me in a moment of prayer and reflection? That God that we know and we see love and kindness and justice, mystery named and unnamed, believed in and not, be with us on this day. And hold all those who feel left out from this story. Maybe those who've been estranged from their family, those who want to reconcile but can't, those who miss the ones they care about. Hold all those who are weary, all those who are done being worried, all those who are angry that the world is not as it should be. Help us make it through this season. Help us hold all those we feel we need to be apart from. Help us remember all those we've lost, all those who came before us. May you know peace. Amen.
After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem, in Judea," they replied. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother, Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route.
So when I rank the Gospels, which I guess you're all supposed to do, right? Does anyone else have a ranking? I really assumed everyone did this. No one else is. We got one ranking? All right, well, I thought this was going to be like a universal thing. So when I rank the Gospels, I put Mark first because, in my view, he's closest to the original source, and also he's kind of the most austere and kind of grumpy. So he has Jesus almost defiantly declaring that he's not God, and he's also really, really mad in that scripture. Then I like Luke because I like the justice stuff, and I put Matthew just above John because Matthew takes a little too much embellishment with the whole prophecy thing. So when I was studying for this service, I was surprised that Matthew's version was my favorite. So let's retell it a little. First of all, according to Matthew, Mary is not impregnated by an angel or by God. Mary is pregnant, and in a dream, Joseph hears God tell him it's okay to marry Mary. That's it. God doesn't come down from anywhere other than in a dream to Joseph. In Matthew, there are no shepherds. Instead, Herod, the big evil bad guy, hears from the Magi that a child will be born who will overthrow empires. Herod, an empire-loving man, does not like this, and in a politically savvy and a little devious way, tricks the Magi into finding Jesus so that he can then find Jesus and, I don't know how to put this, prevent the child from fulfilling the prophecy. In other words, Herod plans to use the Magi or the wise men the Magi is what's in there. We've gendered them. As a means to get to Jesus to end the revolution. No angel tells the Magi what to do. They find out by studying the sky. All they see is one star. When the Magi get to Bethlehem, they see Jesus. They do not go back to Herod. There's something about this child that, according to the story, it undermines Herod's entire attempt to hold on to power. In fact, Matthew continues that they flee to Egypt to hide Jesus from Herod. That's another prophecy thing, that the Messiah is going to come out of Egypt, so you had to have Jesus be in Egypt to be the Messiah to come out of it. But maybe he went there, I don't know. Then this is where it gets really, really dark. Herod kills every child who could possibly be Jesus based on the years they were born. This is a strange story to tell in church, let alone in church with all of this behind me. But it's what's there in script, like it's written down there. So in other words, in this story, the birth of Jesus is the birth of a revolution. It is the end of empire, and it is the end of religion becoming an agent of the state. And yet, the church later became a tool of the state. So our work is not done. Not at all. Let's sing the next carol. Let's go ahead and I invite you to rise in body or spirit. Let's do Christmas Come. This is one we're doing all month.
Let Christmas come, its story told, when days are short and winds are cold. Let Christmas come, its lovely song, when evening soon and night is long. Let Christmas come, its gray star glow. A quiet lady sleeps below. Let Christmas come, its starlight beam, when born again, a quiet dream. Let Christmas come, grant us its peace, when night is dim, our light increase. Let Christmas come, the light now sings and shares the joy the season brings.
So let me start with something logistic for this last part of the service. I don't think any of us know what to do with the benediction right now. I was going to tie this in when I made my notes for the sermon, and I didn't make it in there, so I'm doing it now. So in the before times, everyone would hold hands, and we would go to the back, and we'd have to get to the back before all of you held hands. But we're not going to do that anymore because of, well, all of this, right? So I don't know what to do during the benediction. I guess sit down, although some of you seem to keep wanting to stand. I don't have an answer to that. But let the awkwardness of it be a reminder that we're not done with this thing yet. One of the metrics I have in my head is one day in Louisiana where someone doesn't die from this disease, and we have not hit that in 20 months, however long it's been since March of 2020. So let's let that awkwardness live there, because it needs to be there. In a few minutes, we're going to close with my favorite carol. I think I like it because it's really simple, and maybe because I think it's the only hymn in our hymnal that has a verse in French. And this might be the only place in the country where we can do a verse in French and do it well. So it's exciting to me in that way. But also because times are pretty tough right now, and I just wanted to choose something sort of easy and comforting. I mean, come on, these last few years have been absurdly traumatizing. Just hearing about the new variant has brought up all kinds of weird stuff for me. I don't know if it has for you as well, but I didn't enjoy much of that. I still don't think we've processed Hurricane Ida coming through. You know, I remember watching the local Baton Rouge news from where I evacuated in Dallas. So this is like the morning after the storm made landfall, and I woke up early to find out what the damage was. The two anchors were crying and talking to each other, and they forgot the cameras were there. I'd never seen that. Because the storm hit east of us, and if you don't have family that are in that area, it's probably easy. Let me speak for me. I lost power for a week, but I was evacuated, and my family lost power for a week, and they were there, but that was all of the damage. So it's been easy for me to kind of go about my life without, this was sort of a low-level storm in my experience, but this was not. So I just want to remember that we all went through something pretty significant in September, and I don't think we're done knowing that we went through that. And if there ever was a Christmas, although last year was one hell of a power punch of a Christmas, if there was ever a Christmas that challenged our need for hope or joy, it's this one. From our Advent candle reading, the joy of God with us does not come as naive optimism or as surface-level feel-goodness. Joy cannot be imposed from on high. Joy cannot be commanded. The joy of God within is mingled with grief. It exists side by side with mourning, knows that pain and death are all too real, but do not have the final word. This joy tends tenderly to beauty and softness and gladness that comes from paying attention to what matters. The joy of God with us is collective, liberating us from deadly despair. Joy is gestating in darkness. It comes unexpectedly. Joy invites our expectation and demands our participation. Prepare the way for joy with sorrow. May joy be birthed among, within, and through all of us this Advent. I am not asking you to manufacture hope or joy. I'm asking you to practice being okay waiting for it to come, because it will come. Maybe not now, maybe not this week, maybe not when the days are short, but it will come. When you are trying to find a way out of joylessness or hopelessness, what story from this Christmas narrative do you need to bring about a more joyous, more hopeful, more just, and a more loving world? What in this story will help us right the wrong of the Church of Jesus becoming an agent of empire? What in this story will help us prioritize a radical justice for all people, especially those on the margins, especially those we've been taught to not see as worthy? What in this story will help us so that no one will be trapped by a crumbling fear and misinformation that keeps all of us sick? And I mean that one literally. It's really not about the birth of a child, in my view. The joy and hope of Christmas is the fact that there are more people than just us, more people in the world who are coming along, and they will fix what we couldn't fix, and they will help where we couldn't help, and we will all get there. But right now we have to wait. Amen. I invite you to rise to sing this carol. We're going to do French and then 2 Englishes.
Jeannette Isabelle, flambeau courant au berceau, c'est Jésus, bon Jean du Môme, le Christ est né, le lui appelle, ah, 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 que la mère est belle, ah, 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 que l'enfant est beau. Bring a torch, Jeannette Isabelle, bring a torch and quickly run. Christ is born Come, good folk of the village, Christ is born, and Mary's calling. Ah, ah, beautiful is the mother. Ah, ah, beautiful is her child. Come and see within the stable. Come and see the Holy One. Come and see the lovely Jesus. Brown his brow, his cheeks are rosy. Hush, hush, quietly now he slumbers. Hush, hush, quietly now he sleeps.
All right, so I am going to ask you to sit because I found the benediction that I wasn't going to use, but I like. It's from Kate Braystrup. She's a Unitarian Universalist minister in Maine. This is what she actually said on an interview, so it's not written out. She says, all 10 lepers were made clean. All 10 went on to live whatever new life was afforded to them thereby. We can be confident that all of them suffered other wounds, for life is wounding. And that all 10 died, for life is also terminal. All 10 have long since gone to dust and story. Sometimes the miracle is a life restored, but the restoration is always temporary. At other times, maybe most of the time, a miracle is the resurrection of love, and I'll sub in here hope and joy, beside the unchanged fact of death and suffering. You can keep playing. I was tasked, I just realized this, with a service about joy, and I did the sad service on joy. So, Merry Christmas. Maybe that's what I was trying to indicate the whole time, definitely on purpose. Go in peace, go in love. Amen.